Let's talk a little bit of solar punk, okay? Or in plain words, a life in harmony with nature. Now, life in harmony with nature. Harmony means no harm, okay? So, a life in harmony with nature is, or solar punk, is vegan, okay? Now, in my description, however, I have put there is room for unfertile eggs and some scale fishes, simply because I have also been through that path and I have still maintained a balanced walk between all my experiences with people. In other words, I have still been able to communicate with people of those diets and still encourage and relate to them on an energetic level, okay? And even on a taste bud level and even some health level, that a plant based diet is way better, okay? And I know the difference. Now, when you see people talking solar punk, but they still want to go ahead and introduce or include car carnism, that's not harmony with nature. I saw this group of young kids or young or youth or young adults on a YouTube video, I think in France. And they're working on a solar punk lifestyle, but there's a video that talks about skinning a goat. And I'm like, oof, no, 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 no. All the animals of the world, of nature, help in maintain the ecosystem. Those goats have a symbiotic relationship with the grass, same as cows, okay? They assist the grass in maintaining its growth, okay? You got to work with that. You have to understand the self-sustaining loop. If you kill off one of the, I guess you can call them moving pieces or moving gears or aspects, or one of the pieces of the grand picture that is the self-sustaining world of solar punk, if you kill that, you're messing up your own potential for self-sustainability. And of course, I'm not going to go into the conversation that people say where it's like, well, plants, but plants though, it's like I mentioned before, plants are on a much higher level, higher than our physical representations. Okay. And like I've also mentioned before, you can't cut the arm of an animal, plant it in the ground, and it'll grow a new arm. At least from what I know, we're not there. Is there a potential we might get there? I don't know. That'd be quite crazy, actually. Insane, but whatever. All right. But you get the gist. The gist is you can't do that with animals. Okay. So, no. With plants, you get cut, they turn into something. All right. And they continue to nourish. Okay. They experience a change, what we call pain. Okay. But they actually can either continue from the same piece that grew. So there are certain branches that when they fall off, they become another tree. Coconuts, when they fall down, they become another coconut. If you open it and you leave it in the ground and you drink it, after you've drunk it, like a baby coconut, that baby coconut turns into another tree, which is going to produce more coconuts. You can't cut an animal, put it in the ground, and it's going to produce more animals and more offspring. Okay? Again, nature offers the nourishment. The animals are there to help maintain the ecosystem of that nourishment so that they may feed themselves as well, and so that we may feed them ourselves as well with what nature's plants, food, medicines provide. Okay? So no, solar punk is not saying you can go ahead and be carnal. If you really want to really be self-sustaining, you need to understand the relationship between these animals and nature. Killing the animal for food doesn't make sense. All right. Now the reason I've mentioned unfertile eggs that chickens tend to lay sometimes, and the reason I mentioned scalefish is because unfertile eggs, there's no embryo in there. Okay, so there's nothing. It hasn't been impregnated. Okay, so there's nothing in there, there's no living life form in there, it's just a substance, a yolk. And then the reason I also mentioned fish is because fish come in a plenty, okay? And I like to give the example that sometimes even with one can of tuna, if someone buys a can of tuna, one can of tuna has more than enough protein, you're good, you'll be fine, okay? Now it's still different, it's breathing, and yes, the creatures may eat it, the other mammals may eat it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eat it. Doesn't mean you can't eat it, but you don't really have to eat it in order to have the most optimal health. And this has already been studied. Okay, it has already been studied. All those omegas that people talk about, those same omegas can be found in seafood, vegetation, and in certain nuts. Okay, like walnuts. All right, but yeah, you don't need to eat fish. I only put that there because that's an area that can be worked on. Okay, it doesn't have too much effect, and it definitely should not be overexploited either. Okay. And as far as taste, you want something as tasty as tuna? Trust me, you can make it with seafood, vegetation, and other things, and you'll be just as hooked to the taste, and you'll be feeling good. Okay. Again, this is coming from someone who has eaten fish, all right, on rare occasions, and who has had unfertile egg, on rare occasion. Okay, for me, that has been most of like a ceremony, kind of like a dip in consciousness almost, but not a complete disconnect from the conscious awareness of the importance and the important role that these animals play in the self sustainable ecosystem that is nature. Okay? So, no, solar punk is not about being able to eat animals and grow animals and eat them. No. Okay? Solar punk, living in harmony with nature, is planting your gardens of food. Okay? You got so many options. Okay? I love lentils. Okay? I make a badass lentil soup, one that's regularly tasting good, and another one that's sweet, that feels like Christmas in your mouth. Yeah. And you get hooked to my shit. But anyways, y'all, that's what I wanted to bring up here, okay? Because I saw that, and some people, of course, there's no surprise that you're going to see these shadows of some trying to, come into something that is good, and they may genuinely be interested in it, or they might be temporarily interested, or they might lose the interest. Okay, if you really want to be in harmony with the benefit of living with nature, focus on the plant-based diet. Okay, when it comes to your diet and what you eat, focus on the plant-based diet. Otherwise, you're just going to feel it's too hard, and you won't be able to connect the dots and realize that maybe you're feeling it's too hard because you did something and eating something that had to go through something very hard and harsh, aka you killed it, or you had someone kill it or slaughter it, and then now you got all those pain endorphins and chemicals in there, all that jumping around. Oh, we could get rid of those endorphins with this kind of lab process. More extra steps of watered down nourishment. Come on, man. That's not what we need. It's just so simple, and I'm glad people are getting it. As far as electricity, you can use the earth and get electricity from the earth. You can amplify small amounts of energy. You can amplify that energy, and you can power your whole system. Plus, at the same time, learn to live with the natural weather. Okay, it's actually pretty nice. Hemp homes, by the way. There's this thing about earth ships. All right, and some are using other materials that are harmful. That can be harmful when they decompose. Well, use hemp, just pure hemp. Hemp is beautiful. All right, y'all. That's all I got right now. Peace. Remember, animals are friends, not food.